Welcome back to another episode of the UIS Coaches Show. I'm Michael Leotta, joined as always by head coach Olivia Lett. Coach, appreciate you joining us as always.
Thank you for having me.
Stars wrapped up their three-game homestand last week. One game against the University of Indianapolis on Thursday night, a tough 80-78 loss in overtime. And Coach, we'll start with this game, and basically it comes down to just missed opportunities in this one for us in this loss.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where when you're talking to the team afterwards, it's easy to pick out one thing that it's like, oh, okay, it was this. There was a whole slew of things that didn't go right down the stretch.
Yeah.
And so it's understanding that, like, we got to fix those things. We got to learn from them. But you also can't beat yourself up because of one thing. And so it's important for each one of them to take some ownership of that thing that maybe they need to get a little bit better at, be a little bit more checked in on, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's a 40-minute game, and not one 45-minute game. And so there's things that happen in the first quarter that maybe get overlooked, that had they gone a little bit better, then we're not in that situation at the end of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned it, a lot of what-ifs in this situation. And you said, hey, earlier in the game, I thought one big spot in this game was the under 5 media timeout in the third quarter. I believe the score was 49-37. Your team was attacking well. You were really defending well. You were another 6-2, 7-2 run away from really putting UIndy in a tough spot, really, and almost kind of run away with that game. And we went scoreless for a few minutes. I think they went to zone. They were able to go over about 2 minutes of going scoreless themselves. I think they got it to maybe 49-44, 49-43 or so, and then were able to close that gap and kind of go from that. I thought that was a real big part of that game where you had a chance to really take them and put them in a tough spot and just didn't take advantage of that. A little bit of that was that zone. Can you talk a little bit about that situation? And did that zone kind of slow down your momentum a little bit, you think?
I think we've struggled this year when the offensive part slows at all, continuing to get defensive stops.
Okay.
And so then we don't get any of those easy baskets, right? And so somebody switches something up on their defensive end, our offensive end, and we maybe stall out for a possession or two possessions, and that turns into 5 or 6 real quick when you're not getting any stops, right?
Yeah.
And you're not getting the type of stops that we get, which a lot of times do turn into an easy bucket. And so if you're not getting some of those really easy looks, in transition from the defensive part, then it's really easy to focus on the offensive side of it. And it's really easy to get frustrated because, we're not scoring. Yeah, well, we also just gave up 6 buckets in a row. And so that's something where we definitely have to continue to mature and continue to get better. And we've done some drills in practice to try to isolate those things and mimic them as much as possible where we don't control the offensive end and we have to just keep getting stops.
Nice, okay. Yeah, credit to UIndy. They hit some shots down the stretch as well. Take us kind of in the huddle a little bit. 1.6 in a defensive possession. What are you telling your team in a situation like that when you only have 1.6? What's the focus? Is it a certain player? Is it a certain screen action? What's important to get around to your team to make sure they know in that 1.6 seconds to try to get a stop?
Yeah, we had a couple situations like that, right? We ended regulation on defense as well, and honestly, on defense is typically where I feel a little bit stronger because sometimes we struggle to get the ball in the basket, and so I feel a little bit more confident there, and I think they executed on both of our defensive possessions. They hit the shot at the end of regulation, and we had debated whether or not we were going to foul, and hindsight's 20/20. Maybe we should have fouled up 3 so that they only had a chance to get 2 points. And so that's somewhere where, as a coaching staff, we've talked about that, maybe changing that in the future. And then at the end of overtime, you're really trying to keep them in front of you, and we just let one get away from us, and so they were able to get that quick bucket.
Yeah, and you mentioned that fouling up 3, and I think we mentioned that on the broadcast too. I think there was about 15 seconds left.
It was,
which is probably a lot. Are you talking about maybe fouling maybe under 6 or 7? I mean,
that would have been great.
What's your philosophy on that when you want to foul up to that? Is there a certain time frame that you feel like 6, 7 seconds is best, or is it just purely situation for you?
I think we probably would have pulled the trigger if we were lower than 15 seconds.
Okay.
I didn't feel like with where our experience level is right now that we could do it on the fly at 8 seconds.
Okay.
We've executed that. We actually executed that in the second round of an NCAA game at Millikan, but it was a team that had been together for 3 years. And so I think it's a little bit different when that's your experience level. And I think we probably could have done it even with 15 seconds. It just tough in that situation, and like I said, hindsight's 20/20. We probably made the wrong call, but it is what it is.
Well, but also that team was 2 of 11 or 2 of 12 from the three-point line, so it wasn't exactly like they had players that were hunting threes and being able to feel good about 3-point shots too. So, again, you said hindsight's 20/20, but But anyway, yeah, tough 80-78 loss. You did a lot of good things. Ultimately, just didn't get the W, but a lot of good things going in that game that we can build on to. Big road trip coming up.
Yeah.
Head to Fayette, Iowa this Thursday, play at Upper Iowa, and then at Lewis on Saturday. Tell us a little bit about those matchups so far, what you've learned about those teams coming into this week.
Yeah, this is a weird point in the season because at this point you typically have seen every team once. And so we are having 2 new preps the second to last week of the season.
Yeah.
That's a little tough just because you've kind of gotten in this rhythm of, okay, this is the second time we're seeing a team. And all of a sudden you've got to get back to this is the first time that we're seeing somebody. So it's definitely a different feeling this week, getting ready for that. A long bus trip twice. Lewis isn't that bad of a bus trip, but when you're going from Upper Iowa to Lewis, that's takes some time. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on the bus this weekend. So making sure that we're preparing and really trying to focus on us, just continuing to get better going into the end of the season. That's what we're trying to do in practice as well. We've done a lot more individual development in the last 2 weeks, just knowing that, okay, we gotta get ready for the off season too, and this is what you should be doing in your off season. And so trying to give them those tools that they need when they go home for the summer, or when we can't work out with them, making sure that they're using their time. And I think that's a big part of our prep going into these last 2 games too.
Yeah, and last road trip always kind of precedes usually that last home trip. And the big thing about next week being the final 2 home games is you start to think about those players that have been here a long time and that are going to be graduating and leaving. And certainly we have some players that are going to be in that position a little bit. And it's never too early to start talking about their impacts, what we're going to miss about them, and some things there. Talk a little bit about your seniors as we get close to their final homestand next weekend.
Yeah, it's crazy, almost to those last 2 home games. So hopefully we can get good crowds out for that because I think these 2 deserve it. They stuck with it in a time where there was a lot of things changing and it wasn't going to be easy. And obviously there wasn't a lot just here in general. The most we've had is 9 healthy bodies this season. And so that's tough. And I think they both, Sahara Murphy and Nia Udaiwood, have both led the charge with, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to play this style. Even though it's hard, those 2 sometimes carry some of the hardest load in it. Murph is on the ball, Nia is running in transition, and those are 2 hard jobs. And I think that if we didn't have them kind of carrying that torch, then this season would have been a lot more of a struggle. I get that we only have 5 wins, but we've had a lot of close ones, and we've had a lot of battles and a lot of exciting games, and a lot of that is that's attributed to those 2.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about both these 2 off the court, right? Obviously Sahara Murphy's been here a little bit longer, but so much of what they do impacts, not only just their basketball team, but impacts campus life, impacts representative school. And then, of course, the big thing is we want to make sure that they leave here, after UIS and go out and be successful as professionals in whatever area they want to. Talk a little bit about what we don't know off the basketball court about these 2.
Nia's got one of those personalities that makes everybody feel welcome. At a team function, she's the one that bounces around kind of from group to group or recruits there to make sure that they feel involved. Just very engaging. She's got a big, exuberant smile and just kind of gets people to have energy and excitement. And that's at practice as well. And she's great for that. And then Sahara Murphy's probably the flip side of that a little bit, right? She's got that tough exterior, and we've seen her smile a little bit more on the court recently, and that's cool to see. But she's the ultimate competitor. When I first called her, when I got the job, it was well, I'm a senior, I want to win now, and I don't want this to be a long season. And, I think you see that early on she was, and she still does carry very heavy minutes for us, but early on she was playing 39 and 40 minutes every single game as a senior on rough knees. And that's a tough style, and she leads us probably in charges taken. And so to do that again as a senior that hasn't won a ton of games in her senior year, it just kind of speaks to how much of a competitor she is.
Yeah, 39, 40 minutes is one thing. 39, 40 minutes playing as hard as she does, it's quite another. It feels like almost 50 or 60 sometimes. So certainly we'll talk more about them next week in our coaches show as we get ready for their homestand, but always special when we have a couple seniors that we can highlight here as the season starts to wrap up. Coach, best of luck this week on the road. We look forward to seeing you back here at track and our seniors next weekend against Rockhurst and William Jewell. For Olivia Lett, I'm Michael Leotta. This has been the UIS Coaches Show.